Hey, hello, my Redskins fans. Welcome back once again, my fellow feathered tribesmen, into this channel where we discuss everything Washington Redskins. So do me a favor, go to that refrigerator of yours, pull out yourself a nice tall glass of whatever your preference. Sit back, kick your feet up, and let me take the helm for just a little while. In this channel, where we may not always agree, but the admission here is free. I am your West Coast host, Burgundy Fly Guy, and this is I think we all knew where this team stood at the end of last week's horrific primetime showing. There were a lot of us who, as Redskin fans, were extremely upset. There are a lot of us individuals that saw in the media as well that the media didn't have a whole lot of glowing things to say. This is both local and national media coverage of last week's game that really showed our organization in dire straits. Besides it being pretty much the Drew Brees show, in very small excerpts you got little tidbits of just how bad the Washington Redskins, the state of affairs in Washington were after last week's game. And a lot of us came on here and did a lot of complaining, did a lot of arguing, we did a lot of pointing the finger, and I was one of the worst of them. I'll have to admit. This last week's game that came out a couple days ago, or yesterday in fact, we saw a much different team. And I think that the emphasis, not necessarily on winning, was at play with this last game. I think that there needed to be a massive change in our attitude. Jay Gruden took a ton of flack for not having this team prepared. I think he knew it. He even admitted it to it in his press conference, that this football team was not prepared despite all of the days off that they had to prepare themselves. They were not prepared. I think that certain members of the coaching staff started to see some of the things that the media was starting to see. Some of the local beat writers were starting to report their displeasure with the attitude that the football team had on the sidelines during the New Orleans game. For a team that had not shown up, for a team that was at a lackluster showing on national primetime television, there was a lot of jovial attitudes, there was a lot of hoopla, there was a lot of grab ass and smiles on our faces, And that attitude started to change real quick going into the locker room. For those of you that heard, there was an altercation between Josh Norman and our head coach where, and I'm not going to go into exact details as far as to what happened, but let's just say I feel that Jay Gruden singled Josh Norman out, as well he probably should have. And to tell you the truth, I don't have any qualms at all with what it was that Jay Gruden did. I don't besmirch what it was that he did at all, because ultimately this whole situation falls on his shoulders. And I'm going to go looking towards the individuals on this football team that I expect more out of, especially when I'm paying them a crap ton of money in the upwards of $20 million to play football for me, to have a lackluster, piss-poor performance. When you're making that much money, you don't have the luxury of having a piss-poor performance on any given Sunday or any given Monday or Thursday, whichever the day your team suits up and goes out and plays in front of a national audience. You do not get the luxury of ever having a piss-poor performance. The only time you should have that kind of a performance is if you're injured and no longer playing. That is it. That's the only excuse you have. Other than that, if you're out there on that football field and you're making $20 million as a cornerback in this league, there's no excuse at all. And you are going to become the brunt of the blame on defense, and as well he should be. And I think that Josh Norman actually took it in stride. I think he understood where Jay was coming from. And he came out and changed his attitude. And in this game, he blew it up. He did the one thing that we've been looking for Josh Norman the last 3 weeks. Didn't I mention last week that I haven't seen Josh Norman punch a football out for a fumble despite many opportunities to do so yet this season? And it's funny that he does it in this game, which is exactly what you want to see. It's exactly what you want to see. He's made it a moniker. He's made it his signature touch on defense. And I don't understand why not every single opportunity that you have when somebody's got players draped around him and trying to gain a couple extra yards, why you want to throw that straight right-hand cross right up against the nose of that damn football and pop that sumbitch out. I don't understand why you want to do that every single time. And there were opportunities that I saw that Josh Norman prior to this game that would pass up on those opportunities. This team came out with a much different attitude. This team came out with an attitude that they wanted to win. They came out with an attitude that they were going to execute. I saw more execution in this game than I have at any game this season. I saw more execution here than I did anywhere. Even in that, the game that we had a couple weeks ago against Green Bay, I saw more execution in this game than I did in that one. And that was a good game. So the question remains, which team is your Washington Redskin football team? Because this team that showed up last week is the team that management is expecting to see. When they talk about how we are good, and those of us naysayers that say to the contrary that we're not that good, this is the team that our management is referring to. This team that you saw on TV last week. But the question still remains, which team's going to show up? Being a common theme amongst Redskin fans who've watched this team for years, we've seen the ebbs and flows of execution or the lack thereof from week to week to week. And right now, we're batting at 500. We'll come out for a game, we'll totally destroy whoever it is we're playing against, and play at a team that really wants to take this division and be a contender for the playoffs, and then we'll come back out next week and we'll play like some third-star, third-B high school football team that doesn't know its ass from a hole in the ground. It looked like a bunch of water polo players in pads trying to play this sport, like we did last week. So the question remains, who is it that who are we? And this ultimately comes down to the coaching staff. This ultimately comes down to the players. You have to be ready. You have to be ready on this football field. You have to be ready to go. And you can sit here and you can talk about it, but until you get out there and execute it, it's just talk. It's just hearsay. It doesn't... I'm not interested in locker room pep talks. I'm not interested in sideline chants and jeerings and whatever it is that these guys do in their off time when we're not playing whistle to whistle. I'm interested in the whistle to whistle part. I know all too well about what it's like to have inspirational speeches during halftime. As soon as you come out of the locker room door, you're as flat as a bug, and the other team's executing it like hell all over you up and down the field. Where's your speech then? It just comes down to execution. It comes down to the leaders on this football team being able to pick this team up by its bootstraps, start getting on people's asses. And I just think there's, like I said last week, I made some pretty insulting remarks last week, I'll have to admit. I told this team that they were adorable. I told this team that they were cute. I told this team that they were nice. all of those things are not things you want to take onto the football field. Those are things that will make you lose your job. Having those types of attitudes, if you go onto the football field with the attitude that you're going to be adorable and you're going to be nice, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your health, too. You're going to get injured. You need to take the initiative. You need to force and impose your will upon your opponent. There is no other way around it. This football game was a very, very enjoyable football game for me to watch. I've gone back and watched it a couple of times from different angles, and I've been very impressed with a couple of things that I've seen. I'll be covering some of the positives, and I'll be covering some of the negatives. I'm going to go right back into a segue into one of the previous videos that I had a couple weeks ago. I had immediately cut my demo and went right into picture time. I don't like showing videos. I've shown videos on my channel before, and I've gotten popped for them. If you guys are showing videos on your channel, more power to you. God bless you. But when YouTube catches up with you and starts hitting you with copyright dings, I go to picture. So it's going to be picture time with Burgundy Fly Guy right now. The last time I had shown picture time, for those of you that recall, I had talked about a football team in particular, in the Indianapolis Colts, that were pulling stunts on our offensive line, and I singled out our left guard, Sean Lobau, and his inability, due to his posture on one particular play, to be able to pick up a stunt. Now, I'm going to go back in this game and talk about something very, very similar. A very, very similar situation where you have a team that comes in and tries to pick up a stunt. And to kind of give you guys a little bit of a picture here with our offensive linemen, I'm taking a look at this posture, and of course we're taking a look, I believe this is in the second quarter. I believe this was our second touchdown. And this team had switches and stunts and blitz packages coming out like crazy. And I wouldn't blame them for doing that, because we are an inexperienced offensive line, especially when you're talking about our center and our left guard, and those are two positions they picked on mightily. But in this particular play, I'm going to show you, we have our individual number 73, Chase Rouillet, that is in the left guard position right here. To the left of him, you've got Trent Williams, and then also you have our center. Now, taking a look at this play, I'm going to go back and draw our imaginary line here, where we have our line of scrimmage, this yellow line. And this yellow line becomes pertinent because I start to use this yellow line of scrimmage, as a position as to where you would like your hips to be horizontal with this yellow line, horizontal with the line of scrimmage. The minute you turn your hips and go perpendicular, that's usually when you get beat or you get out of position on a stunt. And these guys that play these outside edges, these linebackers that come in from these positions and go right off that hip of yours, is not a good thing if you are out of position. This particular play, Chase Rouillet is going to be down blocking this individual right here. And I cannot remember his name. I had it earlier. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what. He's number 97 for the Carolina Panthers. The next slide that I have, as you can see, he comes to the outside and starts to block this number 97, starts to block him to the left, and Trent is looking for the outside edge to block him. However, this defensive tackle is starting to shoot down from his position here to the left. Okay? That's the position that he's trying to go to. He's trying to go from here to the left in this direction. And this outside pass rush is going to try to go from this position here and then swing around to the outside of this open space. You take a look at this open space right here. That is what a stunt, this is what you want when you're on a stunt. You want this guy to be able to come in here and get all this real estate and shoot this gap, because you're hoping that this left guard is out of position. Okay, so I'll take those two axes, those two lines away. So you're starting to see that this guy's job right here is to move in this direction, to take this left guard into this direction, to create more space in here for this outside edge to peek right through this gap. That is pretty much a stunt in a nutshell. And it depends a lot on the skill level of this guy right here. Can he keep his hips square, still maintain a block, but get himself out to this position to pick up this outside edge that's stunting in the center? Now, this is one slide here. We're going to go on to the next slide. And as you can see, because Chase's hips, we take a look at his hips again. They are perpendicular. Okay, they're horizontal, actually, with the line of scrimmage. He is in perfect position right here. His hips are in the right spot. He's leaning over. He's picking up this block. And he's got that outside shoulder that's free. That outside shoulder that's free in order to be able to push off with his left shoulder and be able to make a block with his right. And that's exactly what he does on this particular play. When he shoots out, he's in perfect position. As soon as he shoots out that outside edge, goes to shoot that gap, he is in position right here to use all of his power and all of his might to push that individual to the inside. So he's going to be able to push him in this direction and get him out of this lane. He's trying to shoot inside this lane, this defensive player, but being he's getting pushed out, he's going to end up going out here. And that's what you want. You want to protect this center area where the quarterback is at. Okay? So the next slide that I'm going to show you here, he's fully extended, pushed this outside pass rush to the outside again. And this particular slide, it looks like that, this outside rush is going to be heading straight for Alex Smith. But instead of getting a straight shot on Alex Smith, he's on a trajectory course in this direction. Okay, and all Alex Smith does is out of the corner of his eye see this rush coming from the inside, and he takes a side step to the left, and Rouillet's still got his arm extended, pushing that outside pass rush. Perfect play. Perfect play. You couldn't ask for anything more from your left guard position than to be able to do exactly what he does right here in order to get from this position to this position. Okay, where those hips are, standing position here, and as soon as that ball is snapped, come up and have those hips perpendicular, those feet moving, so that you could bump back inside and pick up that inside rush, that stunt coming to the inside. Little things like this. This was what I felt was one of the many things that was a detriment to our offensive line that defensive coordinators from other teams took a look at and said, we can stunt all day on the Washington Redskins, and Sean Loval's not going to pick up half of them. And they'll take those odds. They will take those odds. You start throwing stunt packages, and the minute Sean Loval gets hurt and they bring in, they take your center and you move him to the right guard position, you're thinking this guy's playing right guard. He's not all that adept at playing, left guard. We're going to throw some more stunts at this guy. Okay, it's not Sean Loval. Maybe this guy might be a little bit better. We don't know, but he's new to the position. Let's throw stunts at him anyway. And I have to say, one of my in my notes that I took in this game, I was very, very impressed. I'm gonna make a statement. So brace yourself. Hold on to something. Hold on to your beverage. Make sure that it's secure. Take your feet off the desk and put them on the floor firmly. And sit up in your chair. And if you have a seatbelt handy, put it on. Because I'm going to make a statement that may make you a little unstable. It may make you question my sanity. I think this is one of the best offensive line setups that I've seen since the Mike Shanahan era. This offensive line, I noticed last week with this same offensive line that there was potential there. I didn't mind Chase playing left guard. He wasn't perfect. But it's the same thing when he went into the center position. He was weak. We were compensating. If you guys remember some of my videos in the past, you remember me saying this. When Chase Rouillet got moved into that center position, we had our guards that were kind of compensating for his lack of experience at the position. They were putting themselves, especially Brandon Sheriff, putting himself out of position to help out Chase Rouillet with that center double-A gap pressure, whatever it was that was coming up the middle. He was there to help him out and still try to do his job at the same time. And then this is towards the end of the last season. Then towards the very last 2 weeks, you started to see a little bit of improvement out of Chase Rouillet. To where he comes into this season here after having a full off season, full preseason as a center and doing really, really well as a center. Our left guard gets hurt as a detriment to this football team, and then we end up moving this guy from center to left guard. Chase Rouillet is a left guard as opposed to a center. He plays much better at left guard. And I'd have to kind of question as to whether this decision to move him to that position, if this was it Bergstrom's strength at center, or was it Chase Rouillet's strength at guard? Is that the reason why you have these individuals in the positions that they're in? Because that would, to a certain extent make sense to me. that's honestly, I don't think any of us would necessarily know unless somebody asked that question in a press conference. But Bergstrom, I felt, did a fairly decent job at center. One of the things that I'll tell you about the makeup of this offensive line is we are a lot faster. One of the biggest gripes I've had about our offensive coordinator was his insistence on taking Sean Loval and pulling him across center. Pulling him from left to the right across center because the guy's too bulky, he's too slow, he cannot get his fat ass out there. I said, if you're going to pull left guard with Sean Loval, you've got to pull him to the left. You've got to pull him on the opposite side of Trent Williams. That's his strength. I've seen us pull both guard center, left and right, and it's some of the best counter movement that I have seen from this offensive line since Shanahan. And Shanahan liked the lighter, faster on their feet offensive linemen for that very reason. They can pop that outside edge on a counter much faster than the big burly guys that are there to protect center. Chase Rouillet did a phenomenal job in this football game at being able to get his butt around that right tackle position to make blocks downfield. Even Tony Bergstrom was able to really do a phenomenal job of popping out in that outside edge to be able to help with screens, with counters. It was great to see, and I got to tell you, if you have access to the coaches' film of this game, it's worth going through and taking a look at the offensive line and its performance. There's a play in here, guys, where Carolina gets creative. Carolina pulls a twist and a stunt in the same play, and we picked up both of them. And I think I watched that one play at least 50 times, over and over and over and over and over and over again. Those little things bring joy to my heart. Those little things, it's like watching your baby child take its first steps. To see a twist and a stunt in the same play when your team was struggling with just stunts in week 2. Here we are, a couple weeks later, and we're picking up not only twists, but we're picking up a stunt behind the twist. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful to see. This team is not 100% at offensive line. But what I saw last week, the execution, I'm seeing one-on-one matchups with, let's face it, this Carolina defensive line. This Carolina defensive line is phenomenal. They're very, very good. Dontari Poe, number 95, I was not looking forward to going up against Dontari Poe. Especially if you put him on an inside technique, going up against Bergstrom and going up against Rouillet. That's a matchup that I was not looking forward to. And I got to tell you guys, we could have done worse. We did really, really well against Dontari Poe. And that big, they love those big, strong, fast, top-heavy defensive linemen that can really, really collapse that pocket. And they're very versatile. I was impressed with this defensive line that Carolina had. It makes me kind of jealous a little bit, especially when you got a guy like Christian McCaffrey in the background who is very, very small and shifty and hard to see. We did a phenomenal job. I was really glad to see our defense play really, really well, and then our offensive line do really, really well against this defense. So, I think that, when it comes to our offensive line, picking up stunts, picking up blitzes, moving out onto the backside, and that's another thing too. Backside blocking by Chase Rouillet. By backside blocking, I mean when you take your guard, or when you take your center and your right guard. So that is Tony Bergstrom and that is Brandon Sheriff, and you pull them to the right. Part of what makes that play work is when those two individuals pop out and move around Morgan Moses for the counter, when they sweep out to pick up linebackers and whoever it is that they see that they can block. One of the big backside seal blocks, the weak side blocking from that left guard, he usually shifts over and then cuts down at the legs. It's a chop block, even though chop block is illegal, but everybody does it. It was good to see Chase Rouillet still execute that block, that backside block, really, really well. That was something that Loval could not do. And we did not have, I don't think you necessarily have the ability to have a center to do that on a regular basis. Your guards have to be good at that type of blocking. They have to be able to take out a player from the thighs and the knees. I dare say knees. I don't even know necessarily what the rule is, but let's just call it a chop block, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what it is. That chop block to pick up that backside rush so that your counter is successful. It was good to see him be able to do that, and I haven't seen execution like that on a consistent basis in a very, very long time. I'm very, very impressed with Chase Roullier. I am actually fairly impressed with Bergstrom being at center. And if this offensive line stays healthy, I think that Trent Williams did a great job in this game too. If this offensive line stays healthy, this could be one of the better offensive lines that we've had in a very, very long time. Just the chemistry is there that I'm seeing. The execution is by far there. I would like to see us get a little bit more technique on being able to sustain that pass rush so that Alex Smith has clearer passing lanes. That's just going to be the bulldog in them. They're just going to have to pony up and pick themselves up by the bootstraps and just really, really go after the individual across the line from them. They're doing a good job of it now, but we can see probably a little bit of improvement there. But other than that, I was very impressed. Josh Norman, of course, as I said, he was an individual that did a really, really good job in this particular game. We want to see more out of him. We want to be able to see him do the same thing. With Josh Norman being as phenomenal as he is in this game, and granted, this is against his former team, so he was going to be up for this game, I would very much like to see him continue that. We'll see. But obviously, the weak link in this game is Quinton Dunbar. I have got all the confidence in the world that this is not going to be a regular basis thing. I have enough faith in Quinton Dunbar at this point to think that Quentin's going to have games where he's off, and he's going to have games when you're not going to want to go near him with that football. He's a good enough player, and I feel that right now this is one of the better Washington Redskin organizations turning out talent at the corner position that I've seen in a very, 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 very long time. To be able to have us get some newer individuals and bring them into this position and coach them to the talent level that they're at right now is a testament to this coaching staff for now. Assuming that we can play at this level. That's the secret to this team, is we have to play at this high level every single week. And that should be worrying on your minds. Are we going to be able to be prepared to play the team that's coming after us this weekend with that same level of intensity? We're going to be looking for that week in and week out. Another big one was attacking downfield. One of the biggest complaints that a lot of us had going into this game this week was the lack of production downfield in the passing game. I even came out with a statement. I probably paid one of the more harshest reviews of last week's game in my comments about Alex Smith. Was I don't even think he's trying to throw it out on the football field at all. I think he's just looking for the sake of looking without any intention of throwing the football down the field and having absolutely every single intention of just checking it down into the flat. That's just what I saw last week. This week, we did the one thing that we needed to do to get more success on this offense, was to alleviate that pressure from the shallow passing and the running game by testing a defense vertically. We did that in this game, and it was great to see. Our quarterback still really, really wants to get rid of that football within 3 seconds, and that's fine. That's fine. Some of these, I'm telling you, there's a lot of these outside out routes that are open, wide open, but it's going to take him standing in a pocket for about 5 seconds in order to get that ball out and get it out there on time to get a first down where we need to get a first down. And I don't think he likes having that football in his hand for 5 seconds. I think he wants to get it out in 3 to 3.5 seconds. He wants that football out of his hands. If he comes up on 5 seconds, then Alex Smith is running. He's looking at gaps in that pocket. He's looking at getting out and running to either run completely to the first down or to lob it at the last second, which is not bad, but it's a detriment to those outside passing routes because you need longer time for them to formulate in order to throw them, and I don't necessarily know if our quarterback likes doing that. I'm not going to complain too much about that because in this game he threw vertically. He was throwing to Vernon Davis. He was throwing to outside wide receivers. We even had a couple. We even had a couple plays in here, where Josh Doxson was actually able to catch, a few passes, which is good. That's really, really good to see. But there's, I would still like to see a hell of a lot more production from that kid. I would like to see a little bit more effort as well. But he did catch a couple passes, and they did, it looked like it was working fairly well for us. Richardson had a really, really good game. Not going to expect too much out of this guy. This guy's not an A-list player, but he stepped up and played a very, very good game, had a touchdown in this game as well. So he did a phenomenal job, and hopefully we can see some improvement in there as well. I'm going to bring up a couple of things that are negative aspects after I've talked about some of the positive. One of the negative aspects that I'm seeing, I'm thoroughly convinced at this point, and I've seen some complaints, and I even saw a comment in my last video where I did not bring up Preston Smith and his getting trucked by a backup quarterback in the New Orleans game. Coming into this game, I didn't see a whole lot more of improvement on him in this game. He did play a little bit better. And I paid quite a bit of attention to Preston Smith in this game, and I will admit, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to Preston Smith. I pay attention more to Ryan Kerrigan than I do Preston Smith. I pay attention to our middle linebackers a hell of a lot more than I do Preston Smith. And I probably should focus more on Preston Smith. I focus enough on our players. Preston Smith is one of those guys that gets pushed off to the wayside, and you should ask yourself, is that my fault that I don't pay attention to him? Or is that Preston Smith's fault that I don't pay attention to him? Because if I'm Preston Smith, it's my job to make people not want to take their eyes off me. It is my job to make sure people have a reason to see what it is that I do every single play. I want to be able to look back and say, whoa, who is that got, pressure on the quarterback? That was amazing. Oh, number 94, Preston Smith. Okay. I'll go back and watch and see exactly how Preston Smith got from point A to point B. You know how many times I've said that to myself this season and last season? I can count them on one hand. Out of 16 games, I can count them on one hand. That's not good. And I'm watching halfway through this game, and I'm starting to get upset by watching Preston Smith play. I'm starting to get upset because how long has the Preston Smith project taken place? I know some of you guys are done with him. Some of you guys have flat out said, we cannot re-sign this guy. We can't. Here's the thing. I'm going to say something about Preston Smith, and a majority of the turnaround for Preston Smith is going to have to come from Preston Smith. The other part of this is going to be our linebackers coach and our defensive coordinator to be able to light a fire onto this guy's ass. I'm telling you right now, I am done watching Preston Smith stand up in a pass rush. I'm done watching him freestanding on a pass rush. I think if it was me, and if I was his coach, or if I was coordinator, I would say your days of standing up are done. He plays so much faster and so much quicker with his hand in the dirt. He needs to come out of a three-point stance. It's just he plays under half-speed pretenses every single time you stand him up on an outside rush. Ryan Kerrigan, I don't mind. Ryan Kerrigan's got a hell of a motor. It's just that motor's getting slower. Okay, he still comes out with a lot of enthusiasm. I've got complaints about Ryan Kerrigan, but he's on a consistent basis at least pressuring that pocket. Preston Smith, on the other hand, I just get the impression when he stands up and pass rushes that he could care less. I'm not seeing any 100% effort on him at all. I'm just not seeing it unless he gets down on a three-point stance. And at least if he's going to give me half-ass effort, his first 2 or 3 steps are going to be quick because he's in a three-point. Those first 3 steps are so detrimental. They're so huge to any pass rush. It's your first 3 steps are crucial. Whether you're inside, whether you're outside, whether you're stunting, whether you're twisting, whatever it is that you're doing, those first 3 steps are huge. And the first 3 steps for Preston, I get the impression that those are his most hesitant because he wants to see the play formulate before he makes his attack. Bad thinking. That's how losers think at this league, at this position. You cannot do that. And I think this is a sickness is indicative of our linebacker play. The only person I see that doesn't do that is Zach Brown and Ryan Kerrigan. I see Mason Foster do this, and I see Preston Smith do this, where they like to give a little bit of an effort to see where the play is going. By the time they finally make their move to make a move on the ball and make a tackle, the person that they're tackling's already got 5 yards gain. I don't want that. I don't need that. I can get that from any linebacker in the country. It's not what I need from him. Preston Smith, I want to see massive pressure coming from that outside. If your goal is to get to the quarterback, and that's what you're supposed to do on that given play, then your job is to get to the quarterback. It's not to sit there and play patty cake with the person across from you so that they can tell you where the play is going and then make your move. That's not what I want from you. That's not what I want. That's not what we drafted you for at the height of which we drafted you. That's not what you're there for. You're there to be a pass rusher, and I need to see that from him. And if it was me, I'm telling you right now, there's not a play in this game where Preston Smith does not have his hand in the dirt. Unless the only time I would ever stand him up is in nickel packages where he's got to be out in the zone flat, guarding somebody in his zone. That's the only time. I say, okay, well, then now you can stand up. But you are not the pass rush ever standing up. You are to pass rush every single time in a three-point stance. I don't care how dumb it feels or how sick of it you are. You play better in a three-pointer, and that's just my opinion on that situation. This game, this team played with a lot more enthusiasm in this game. This team came out, and you could tell they were hungry when they marched down the field. There was a lot of discipline on this team. There was effort on this team. There was a unity on this team, and I think we're still to a certain extent looking for and searching for an identity as well. And that's good to see. How long it lasts, that's going to be the key. This is where professionals need to step up and make sure that this type of intensity is matched every single week, and this is also the job of the head coaches to make sure that their team is prepared, to make sure that their team is in the right headspace to come out here and perform and be able to play at this level. I don't expect us to win every single game at this level of intensity, but I expect this level of intensity. I don't care if we get blown out. I don't care if we lose. If the effort isn't there, if what you saw last week, plug in the New Orleans game from last week, okay, the Drew Brees show, that is the earmarkings of a lackluster, uninspired football team at its purest form. We can't see that ever again. We just can't. If you want to have a successful football franchise, you're going to want to see what you saw this weekend against the Carolina Panthers, that type of effort. This team came out and played with purpose. They were pissed. I can tell you a bunch of them probably read some of the news clippings. Some of them probably saw some of our videos and probably didn't have a whole lot of nice things to say about us. But, hey, we're not the ones out there, with the job and the task of winning. It's their job to do that. I hope Sean Lovell comes back under a backup position only. So if any of these guys get hurt, at least we will have him come back and play in a backup position. I am wholeheartedly convinced that this offensive line is the offensive line that we want moving from here on out. And this is the offensive line I'm going to try to keep to propel me to that next stage. And being able to work off of this, both in our passing game and our running game, would be good to see. Also, Adrian Peterson popped his shoulder back into place and came back out this week and played. I want to apologize to Adrian Peterson because I made some comments about our football team last week, how I was not impressed with anybody's play. I should take that back because I was actually impressed with Adrian Peterson's play. Adrian Peterson plays with a certain level of veracity that you hope is contagious. And this week was no exception. This week, Adrian is easier to bring down now than he was when he was in his 20s, clearly. But he still plays with a measure of veracity and tenacity. He fights for that extra yard, whether it is a massive stiff arm to the chest, whether it is juking and popping out to the left or to the right to try to gain a couple extra yards. The fact that he gets upset and pissed off when he gets brought down a little bit too sooner than what he would like, because his effort's there. I'm not going to sit here and besmirch his efforts or his lack of productivity when I see that type of intensity, because I know the man is hungrier than hell. He wants that football and he wants those yards. And even if he gets a 40-yard gain, if he gets shoestring tackle from behind, he's pissed. He's upset. He wants it perfect. He wants to be perfect. And I love that intensity to strive for perfection. And so I want to apologize to Adrian Peterson last week for his efforts because despite my comments and thinking everybody sucked, Adrian Peterson did play with a a level of intensity that was satisfactory for Burgundy Flag Eye, and this week also was no exception. This is just a good Carolina defense. Great at open field tackling. Tackling is their forte. They get there quickly. They're very strong. They're very intense. But, man, their tackling's phenomenal. I don't think there's ever been a time in the last 5 or 6 years where we can complain about Carolina's tackling against us. They're very, very good open and close field tacklers, so that's a very good job on them. So that's going to do it for me, guys. One last comment that I would like to make at the end of this video for those of you that are still watching, and some of you probably may not necessarily care, but it would behoove me to actually make mention that I would like to send a shout-out to the Seattle Seahawks fans and their organization. Their owner passed away, and he is no longer with us. It was a shame to see the passing of Paul Allen. I come from the Pacific Northwest. I hail from the region up here where Paul Allen made his home, and the man is an icon up here. And his love for the Seattle Seahawks organization was poured into the very walls of Seahawks Stadium. That experience, if you have not experienced it ever, if you ever get an opportunity to come to the Northwest and watch the Redskins play against Seattle in that environment, I would highly suggest it. Despite the fan situation, the venue is one of the better venues that I've been to as far as stadium experiences go. And I've been to a lot of stadiums throughout the NFL, and Seattle is right up there with the scenery of the gorge area and the environment. It can get a little cold, a little rainy out here, but Paul Allen built that stadium with the expressed intent on it being a major homage to its fans, and wanted this to become a difficult place for opponents to play in. And as much as I hate that, as much as I can't stand the acoustics in that place because of the advantage it provides that football team, I think that he did a phenomenal job of building a stadium that was not necessarily meant for him, but meant to be an advantage to his team and to be an advantage for his fans and become a great fan experience as well. But he has passed. He is no longer with us, and that's a sad, sad day. So I'd like to extend my condolences to his family. I would like to send a shout-out to all the Seahawks fans that are out there. And I got to tell you, it's going to be interesting now if you're a Seahawks fan. It's going to be very, very interesting because you guys have won a Super Bowl under Paul Allen as an owner. And now that he's passed, what kind of an owner are you going to get? Because take it from any Washington Redskin fan who's been around for 30-plus years will tell you that we remember the Jack Kent Cooke days. And what happened to this football team after Jack Kent Cooke died. He took his Super Bowl trophies with him. And we haven't seen one since. So if I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan, I'm very, very nervous about who's going to take the mantle as owner of this organization now that Paul Allen has passed. But all that's going to be later on down the road. But for right now, again, a big, huge shout out to the Seahawks fans and their organization. It's sad to see a Titan in the regards of an NFL owner with the clout that he had, to see an individual like him fight the illness that he was fighting and to summarily lose to that fight. That's unfortunate. So that is going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen, for all of us fans of the Twin Feather. We ride together. Redskins for life. We will catch you all next time. See you later.